The Richmond VA Medical Center buzzed with its usual Tuesday morning chaos. Wheelchairs rolled down linoleum hallways, nurses called out room numbers, and the coffee in the break room had gone cold hours ago. Dr. Elena Martinez checked her tablet as she walked toward exam room 314, already running 20 minutes behind schedule. Thompson, Robert E., she muttered, scanning the chart. 72 years old, chronic lower back pain, routine follow-up. Elena had been working the VA for 8 years now. She'd seen everything: shrapnel wounds from Vietnam, IED injuries from Iraq, guys who came back from Afghanistan missing pieces of themselves. Back pain was usually the easy stuff. Pop some x-rays, prescribe some physical therapy, maybe adjust the meds. In and out in 15 minutes. She knocked twice and pushed open the door. Mr. Thompson? The man sitting on the exam table looked like every other aging veteran she treated. Gray hair, weathered face, the kind of posture that suggested years of carrying heavy things. He wore the standard hospital gown and had that 1,000-yard stare she'd seen in countless patients. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice steady but quiet. "I'm Dr. Martinez. Sorry for the wait. Crazy morning." She washed her hands and grabbed his chart. "Says here you're having some lower back issues. How long has this been bothering you?" "Oh, about 30 years or so." Elena paused. Most guys his age complained about pain that started last week. 30 years. And you're just now getting it checked out? Thompson shrugged. "Been dealing with it, but it's getting worse lately. Wife finally made me come in," he almost smiled. "She's persistent." "Well, let's take a look." Elena pulled on latex gloves. "I'm going to need you to remove your gown so I can examine your back. Just turn around and face the wall." "Sure thing, Doc." As Thompson slowly untied the hospital gown and let it fall to his waist, Elena grabbed her stethoscope and turned back toward him. What she saw made her freeze completely. Elena had seen plenty of scars in her career. Bullet wounds, shrapnel, surgical marks from desperate field medicine. But this was different. Thompson's back was covered in a systematic pattern of scars. Precise, deliberate, methodical. They weren't random combat injuries. These had been inflicted by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Jesus," she whispered before she could stop herself. Thompson's shoulders tensed. "Something wrong, Doc?" Elena tried to regain her composure, but her hands were shaking slightly. The scars formed a grid pattern across his spine, small, circular marks that could only have come from one thing. Cigarette burns, dozens of them. And between them, thin lines that looked like knife work. Precise cuts, not life-threatening, but designed for maximum pain. "Mr. Thompson," she said carefully, "these scars, how did you get them?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Can we just focus on the back pain, Doc? That's why I'm here." But Elena couldn't look away. At the base of his neck, barely visible under his hairline, was a tattoo so faded she almost missed it. Not the usual military ink. No eagles or flags or unit patches. This was something else. Numbers and letters in a combination she didn't recognize. "I need to ask you some questions about your medical history," she said, trying to keep her voice professional. "These injuries, when did they occur?" "Long time ago." "Mr. Thompson, I'm required to report certain types of injuries. If someone did this to you, nobody did anything to me that I didn't sign up for." The way he said it made Elena's blood run cold. He'd signed up for torture? What kind of military operation involved systematic torture of American soldiers? She moved around to face him, looking into his eyes for the first time. They were gray, almost colorless, and completely calm. No pain, no trauma, no emotion at all, like looking into a void. "What branch of the military were you in, Mr. Thompson?" "Army." "What unit?" Another long pause. "Can't really discuss that, Doc. Still classified." Elena felt her heart rate spike. Classified? After 30 years? She'd treated plenty of Special Forces guys, Rangers, even some Delta operators who'd had their missions declassified decades ago. What could still be classified after 3 decades? "Mr. Thompson, I think we need to run some additional tests." "Doc," he interrupted gently, "I just need something for the pain, that's all." But Elena was already reaching for her phone. Elena stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding. In 8 years at the VA, she'd never seen anything like the scars on Thompson's back. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Dr. Sarah Kim, Psychiatry Department. Sarah, it's Elena Martinez. I need you to come down to exam room 314, now. I'm in the middle of a session. Can it wait? No, it can't. I've got a patient here with... Sarah, I think this guy might have been tortured. Systematically, for weeks, maybe months. There was silence on the other end. I'll be right there. Elena paced outside the exam room, trying to process what she'd seen. The precision of those scars wasn't random violence. Someone had kept Thompson alive and conscious through prolonged torture, and he'd survived it. More than survived. He seemed completely functional. No signs of PTSD, no nervous tics, no emotional responses at all. Dr. Kim appeared at the end of the hallway, walking fast. She was a small Korean-American woman who specialized in combat trauma, and Elena had never seen her look rattled. Until now. What exactly are we dealing with? Kim asked as they reached the door. Cigarette burns in a grid pattern across his entire back, knife work, professional-level stuff. And he's acting like it's no big deal, says it's still classified. Classified torture? Elena, that doesn't make sense. American military doesn't torture its own soldiers. Then explain those scars. Kim knocked and entered the room. Thompson had put his gown back on and was sitting calmly on the exam table, hands folded in his lap. Mr. Thompson, I'm Dr. Kim from Psychiatry. Dr. Martinez asked me to speak with you about your experiences. Ma'am, Thompson nodded politely. Though I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Kim pulled up a chair. These injuries you sustained, can you tell me about the circumstances? Training accident, Thompson said without hesitation. Sir, I've worked with torture survivors for 15 years. Those aren't training accidents. Thompson looked at her with those flat gray eyes. Ma'am, with respect, I don't think you've worked with survivors of my kind of training. What kind of training involves systematic torture? The kind that prepares you for when the real thing happens. Elena felt the room go cold. You're saying the military tortured you as training? I'm saying I volunteered for a program that prepared me for enemy interrogation. Part of that preparation involved experiencing what I might face if captured. Kim leaned forward. What program? SEER school doesn't leave scars like that. Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made both doctors' blood run cold. SEER is for regular soldiers, Doc. This was for ghosts. Dr. Kim had interrogated hundreds of soldiers about classified operations, and she knew when someone was lying. Thompson wasn't lying. Whatever program he'd been part of, it had been real, sanctioned, and designed to push human endurance beyond anything she'd ever heard of. Ghosts? Elena asked. People who officially don't exist. Thompson explained matter-of-factly. People who get sent places that aren't on any map to do things that never happened. Kim tried a different approach. Mr. Thompson, when was this training? 1978 to 1981. That's 3 years. Yes, ma'am. 3 years of torture training? 3 years of preparation for missions where capture meant death. Or worse. Elena looked at the chart again. Thompson would have been in his early 20s then. A kid, really. How did you survive that? Same way I survived everything else. One day at a time. Kim pulled out her tablet and began typing notes. Mr. Thompson, I need to understand the psychological impact of what you experienced. Do you have nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety attacks? No, ma'am. Nothing? No PTSD symptoms at all? Doc, you can't have PTSD when you're still on active duty. Both women stared at him. Still on active duty? Elena asked. But you're 72 years old. Age is just a number when you're a ghost. Kim set down her tablet. Sir, are you telling us you're currently involved in classified operations? I'm telling you that some commitments don't end with retirement papers. The room fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant sound of hospital machinery, the beating of her own heart. This man sitting calmly on her exam table wasn't just a veteran with back pain. He was something else entirely. The scars, Kim said quietly, were they from enemy interrogation or from training? Both. Training first, then the real thing. 3 different countries, 4 separate captures. The training worked. Elena's hands were shaking again. You were captured 4 times. That's what happens when you spend 20 years walking into places where Americans aren't supposed to be. And you escaped each time. Thompson's expression didn't change. I completed my missions each time. The distinction wasn't lost on either doctor. He hadn't escaped. He'd finished whatever job he'd been sent to do, regardless of what happened to him in the process. Mr. Thompson, Kim said carefully, who authorized this program? Who runs operations like this? People who don't wear uniforms, Doc. People who understand that sometimes democracy requires protecting citizens from the truth. Elena felt sick. Jesus Christ. Language, Doc, Thompson said with the faintest hint of a smile. We're in a hospital. Dr. Kim had interrogated hundreds of soldiers about classified operations, and she knew when someone was lying. Thompson wasn't lying. Whatever program he'd been part of, it had been real, sanctioned, and designed to push human endurance beyond anything she'd ever heard of. Ghosts? Elena asked. People who officially don't exist, Thompson explained matter-of-factly. People who get sent places that aren't on any map to do things that never happened. Kim tried a different approach. Mr. Thompson, when was this training? 1978 to 1981. That's 3 years. Yes, ma'am. 3 years of torture training? 3 years of preparation for missions where capture meant death. Or worse. Elena looked at the chart again. Thompson would have been in his early 20s then. A kid, really. How did you survive that? Same way I survived everything else. 1 day at a time. Kim pulled out her tablet and began typing notes. Mr. Thompson, I need to understand the psychological impact of what you experienced. Do you have nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety attacks? No, ma'am. Nothing? No PTSD symptoms at all? Doc, you can't have PTSD when you're still on active duty. Both women stared at him. Still on active duty? Elena asked. But you're 72 years old. Age is just a number when you're a ghost. Kim set down her tablet. Sir, are you telling us you're currently involved in classified operations? I'm telling you that some commitments don't end with retirement papers. The room fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant sound of hospital machinery, the beating of her own heart. This man sitting calmly on her exam table wasn't just a veteran with back pain. He was something else entirely. The scars, Kim said quietly, were they from enemy interrogation or from training? Both. Training first, then the real thing. 3 different countries, 4 separate captures. The training worked. Elena's hands were shaking again. You were captured 4 times. That's what happens when you spend 20 years walking into places where Americans aren't supposed to be. And you escaped each time. Thompson's expression didn't change. I completed my missions each time. The distinction wasn't lost on either doctor. He hadn't escaped. He'd finished whatever job he'd been sent to do, regardless of what happened to him in the process. Mr. Thompson, Kim said carefully, who authorized this program? Who runs operations like this? People who don't wear uniforms, Doc. People who understand that sometimes democracy requires protecting citizens from the truth. Elena felt sick. Jesus Christ. Language, Doc, Thompson said with the faintest hint of a smile. We're in a hospital. Can't discuss that either. When was your last mission? Thompson looked at the clock on the wall. Can't discuss that. Elena stared at Thompson, trying to process what she was hearing. This wasn't just a veteran with back pain. This was a man who claimed to be an active operational asset for some shadowy government program. And the scars on his back suggested he wasn't lying. Mr. Thompson, she said carefully, I took an oath to do no harm. If you're still being sent on dangerous missions at your age, with your injuries, Doc, my physical condition is monitored by people with clearances you don't have. I'm here because my wife insisted. Not because I need medical attention. Kim looked up from her tablet. Your wife doesn't know about your activities? My wife knows I served my country. She doesn't need to know the details, but she sees the scars. She thinks they're from Vietnam. Elena felt sick. This man had been lying to his wife for decades about torture scars, about his real job, about everything. Don't you think she deserves to know the truth, Doc? The truth would destroy her. She married a man who officially died in 1981. The thing wearing his face and living in his house isn't someone she'd recognize. The way he talked about himself in third person was chilling. Elena had seen dissociative disorders before, but nothing like this. Thompson seemed to have completely compartmentalized his identity. Mr. Thompson, I'm required by law to report certain things. If you're being coerced into dangerous activities, nobody's coercing me, Doc. I volunteered for this life. At 22 years old, you were barely an adult. I was old enough to understand what my country needed. Kim tried a different approach. Sir, what happens if you refuse a mission? Thompson looked at her like she'd asked what would happen if he refused to breathe. That's not an option. Everyone has options, not ghosts. Ghosts follow orders until they're retired permanently. Elena caught the euphemism. Retired permanently? Let's just say the pension plan is very final. Both doctors realized they were dealing with something beyond their expertise. Elena had a choice to make. She could report this to hospital administration, who would contact federal authorities, or she could treat Thompson's back pain and pretend this conversation never happened. Mr. Thompson, if I treat your pain and send you home, are you going to hurt anyone? Only people who need hurting. That's not an answer. Thompson sighed. Doc, I've spent 45 years protecting people who don't know they need protection. I'm not going to stop now. Elena looked at Kim, who shrugged slightly. They were in uncharted territory. The back pain, Elena said finally. Is it affecting your work? Makes it harder to maintain position during long surveillance. Slows down my extraction times. Makes it harder to maintain position during long surveillance. Slows down my extraction times. Elena realized she was about to become complicit in something she didn't understand. But Thompson wasn't threatening anyone, wasn't asking for weapons or classified information. He just wanted relief from chronic pain caused by decades of serving his country in ways she couldn't imagine. I'm going to prescribe physical therapy and some anti-inflammatory medication, she said. But I want you to come back in 2 weeks. Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Thompson, be careful out there. Thompson smiled for the first time since he'd entered the room. Always am, Doc. Always am. 2 weeks later, Elena found herself watching the clock, wondering if Thompson would show up for his follow-up appointment. Part of her hoped he wouldn't. The less she knew about his activities, the better she'd sleep at night. At exactly 2 p.m., he knocked on her door. Mr. Thompson, come in. How are you feeling? He moved differently than before, easier, less stiff. The physical therapy was working. Much better, Doc. That medication really helped. Elena noticed something else different. There was a small bandage on his left hand, and his knuckles were slightly swollen. Fresh injuries. What happened to your hand? Slipped fixing the porch railing. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Elena decided not to push. Let me check your back again. When Thompson removed his shirt, Elena saw something that made her pause. The old scars were still there, but there were new ones. Small, precise cuts along his shoulder blade. Fresh, maybe a week old. Mr. Thompson, training exercise, he said without being asked. Keeping the old skills sharp. Elena wanted to ask more, but she knew he wouldn't answer. Instead, she focused on the original back pain. Range of motion looks much better. The inflammation has decreased significantly. Thanks, Doc. I appreciate you helping me out. As Thompson put his shirt back on, Elena noticed something else. A small electronic device clipped to his belt, hidden under his shirt. It looked like a pager, but more sophisticated. Are you still in pain? Manageable now. I can do my job without distraction. Elena made notes in his chart, then looked up at him. Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever regret it? The choice you made when you were young? Thompson considered the question seriously. Doc, Regret is a luxury I can't afford. I made a choice to become something that could protect innocent people from things they'd never be able to handle. That choice cost me everything I was, but it saved lives that will never know they were in danger. But what about your life? Your happiness? Happiness is watching your neighbor sleep safely in their bed, not knowing that someone spent the night making sure nothing could harm them. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. This man had sacrificed his entire identity, his psychological well-being, probably his soul, to protect people who would never know his name. "I want to see you again in a month," she said. "Might not be possible, Doc. I could be traveling." "Where?" Thompson almost smiled. "Somewhere that doesn't exist." After he left, Elena sat in her office for a long time, staring at his chart. She'd become part of something now, whether she wanted to be or not. She was providing medical support for a man who operated in the shadows, doing things that officially never happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for taking care of our asset. His service is appreciated." Elena deleted the message immediately and realized she was now being watched by the same people who controlled Thompson. She'd crossed a line she didn't even know existed, but somehow she didn't regret it. 6 months later, Elena was working late when her secure hospital line rang. It was nearly midnight, and emergency calls usually came through the main switchboard. "Dr. Martinez, this is Director Sarah Walsh, Department of Veterans Affairs, Washington. I need to speak with you about patient Robert Thompson." Elena's blood went cold. "I can't discuss patient information without proper authorization." "Dr. Martinez, I have a federal clearance level that authorizes me to discuss anything I want. Mr. Thompson died 3 hours ago." Elena felt the room spin. "What? How?" "Heart attack. Very sudden. He was found in his home office. His wife asked us to notify the medical professionals who'd been treating him." Elena tried to process this. Thompson had seemed perfectly healthy 6 months ago. Was he on a mission? There was a long pause. "Dr. Martinez, what exactly did Mr. Thompson tell you about his service?" "He said he was part of a classified program, said he was still active." Another pause. "Dr. Martinez, Robert Thompson was a maintenance worker at Fort Belvoir from 1975 to 2018. He was never involved in any classified operations." Elena's world tilted. "That's impossible. The scars on his back." "Dr. Martinez, Mr. Thompson suffered from a severe form of PTSD that manifested as elaborate fantasy scenarios. He believed he was a covert operative. He inflicted those scars on himself over a period of years, convinced he was recreating torture experiences that never happened." Elena couldn't breathe. No, he was too detailed, too consistent. Mr. Thompson had an eidetic memory and access to countless military documents through his maintenance work. He constructed an elaborate alternate identity to cope with trauma from a training accident in 1978. He convinced himself, and apparently you, that he was something he never was. Elena thought about the mysterious text message, the sophisticated explanations, the calm way Thompson had discussed classified operations. "Someone texted me. Said they were watching him.